So I'm a little hesitant to do this video because people just love to diagnose their significant others based on a few tendencies or a few instances of some kind of trait. But narcissistic traits really do have great impact on relationship. So in this video, I'm going to keep it simple. I want to give you 3 common signs of narcissism. I want to give you 3 tips for dealing in relationship with somebody exhibiting narcissism. And I want to give you 3 phrases that will help you disengage from a conversation with the narcissist when you no longer feel like it's productive. That's today on Relation Shots. Hey, welcome to Relation Shots. My name's Eric Wooten. If this is your first time hanging out with us, welcome to a place to get practical relationship advice that actually works in your relationship. If you've not already done so, go ahead and click the subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss upcoming videos. So we're going to do it. We're going to talk about narcissism. And I usually, as I said in the opener, I tend to shy away from these topics because they feel so cliche. Like it's the buzzword, everybody's using it, everybody wants to talk about it. And I find that whenever we have a relationship buzzword like narcissism or gaslighting, we want to run around and you got all kinds of people diagnosing everybody they know. You get somebody who's a little moody and all of a sudden they're bipolar. No, they're just moody. Or maybe they had a bad day. That doesn't make them bipolar. So I tend to be a little bit hesitant to talk about narcissism because people love to grab a couple qualities and go, oh yeah, they're definitely a narcissist. I know it without a doubt. That's who they are. So we're going to talk about it, but I'm going to caution you not to just quickly try to diagnose whoever's in your life as a narcissist, because here's what happens. As soon as you diagnose them as a narcissist and label them, you begin looking for those things, and we often see what we're looking for, whether or not it actually exists. So the idea is that narcissistic personality disorder is a psychological diagnosis based on some common traits over a period of time. But if you're not a psychologist or psychiatrist, you don't get to diagnose. All I'm trying to do is help you see some of the signs so you know how to act and react with a person that you might be in a relationship with if they're exhibiting some of these signs. So when it comes to narcissism, psychologists identify 2 types of narcissism: grandiose and vulnerable, and they're pretty self-explanatory. But grandiose is just someone who has a high inflated view of self, and a vulnerable narcissist is one who may be insecure and distrusting of others. So when you talk about narcissism, most of the time, people are referring to the grandiose narcissist, the person that has an inflated view of self, is really self-centered, has entitlement issues. Life's all about them. They're arrogant, but at the same time, they're a little hesitant and resistant of criticism of their own lives. That's usually who we're talking about when it comes to being a narcissist. So what I want to do is, if you're in a relationship and you may be wondering, is this what I'm dealing with? Let me give you just 3 common signs of narcissism in a relationship. Number 1, they only want to do things enjoyable to them. So you name it: movies, activities, vacation destinations, restaurants that we go eat at. They always want it to be the place they want to go. And if you're in a relationship with them and you suggest an idea, they'll actually come up with reasons why your idea doesn't work or why your idea is not a good idea, because at the end of the day, they're self-centered. It's all about them. And so they want whatever they do to be something that's enjoyable only to them. There's no give and take like in a healthy relationship where you pick the restaurant this time, I'll pick it next time. Maybe we can compromise on a vacation destination. Or last time we went to the beach, I want to go to the mountains this time. And so there's give and take in a relationship. With somebody who's exhibiting narcissistic traits, there's going to be no give and take. They're always going to want to do what's enjoyable to them. That's trait number 1. Trait number 2 is there's extreme control, often in the area of their partner's appearance. So narcissists usually want their partner to be extremely attractive, to look good, especially they like to get into the area of weight management. But they're not going to do it in a nice way. So if you're in a relationship with one where you express maybe you want to lose a few pounds, they're not just going to try to support you in that and encourage you and hold you accountable. They're going to be the ones driving it. And they're not going to do it nicely. It's going to be through guilt. It's going to be through shame. It's going to be through criticism or condemnation. And they're really going to try to manage it because, again, they think so highly of themselves that they should be with somebody who looks really good. And so it wouldn't make sense for them to let somebody just kind of let their bodies go. They're going to want to be in control of those things. They're also going to want to control and are oftentimes highly jealous of other relationships. So maybe if you find them asking you about your conversations with a coworker, especially a coworker of the opposite sex, what did you guys talk about? Oh, really? It's like they're just interrogating because what was the tone? What was the conversation like? What was the back and forth responses like? And they're just looking for something they can latch onto. When they find that thing, they're going to latch onto that thing and really grind on you because they're highly jealous about that relationship, which also means they're going to tend to want to isolate you from some of those relationships so they can be extreme control, especially in the area of either opposite sex friendships or in the area of appearance. And number 3, emotional abuse or neglect or a combination of the both of them. So narcissists love to manipulate, they love to blame, they love to criticize, they love to attack. All of it is meant to control their environment, but they love to exhibit emotional abuse. And oftentimes they'll do that, and then when you react or respond back, they'll kind of look at you like it was your fault. Maybe it was something you did, and they'll try to spin things a lot of times. A lot of times you'll feel like you're in some kind of crazy cycle with them because they'll begin to spin things back on you. And if they're not being emotionally abusive, oftentimes there's emotional neglect. They have no compassion for your feelings. They have no compassion for your emotions. They don't really care about even when you bring your emotions to them and their valid needs emotionally, they'll make you feel like they're not valid needs. They may call you weak. They may call you emotional, but they don't want to attend to your emotions, so they'll neglect them. And it can be very taxing and tiring when you're receiving both emotional abuse and withdrawal from the emotional needs that you need. It gives you a gigantic gap in your life because you feel like your emotions are being attacked. And then when you express what you really need emotionally, they're going to pull back and neglect those things, which leaves you in a position oftentimes of being emotionally exhausted. So there's just 3 common signs that you may be in a relationship with a narcissist. And if you find yourself in a relationship with a narcissist, what do you do? Well, let me give you 3 tips that will help you deal in relationship with a narcissist. Tip number 1 is establish and stick to healthy boundaries. You need to dictate the behaviors that you are willing to and unwilling to accept in a relationship. This is called boundaries. You set a healthy boundary of the behavior that you expect, and then you hold them to that behavior. Listen, no is okay to use in a relationship. You do not have to go along with everything they want to do. Remember, they think that the world revolves around them, so they're going to want to try to draw you into that. You need boundaries that say this is acceptable behavior, this is not acceptable behavior. I will engage and do these things with you. I won't engage and do these things with you. But they think that everything's about them, so only healthy boundaries will help them determine where you're no longer willing to engage or disengage in whatever they're trying to do. You need to establish healthy boundaries, and then you need to stick to them, and no is your friend. It's okay to use it. Tip number 2 is validate them. Remember, they feel great about themselves, high level of entitlement, and they have a need for admiration. So if you want to relate well with them, you would do well to validate them. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, hold on. Won't that feed their narcissism? Won't that just feed their big ego? Listen, I'm not talking about validating their crazy ideas. I'm not talking about validating things you don't want to go along with. I'm not talking about just making up stuff to magically validate them. I'm saying when you see positive things in the relationship, when they exhibit behaviors that you like, you need to validate those. There's a saying that it goes like this: whatever is celebrated is repeated. And so when they're exhibiting behaviors you like in the relationship, you want to validate those behaviors so that they get repeated again. And if they're not doing those things, don't just validate to validate, but when you validate, it will feed their desire for admiration, and you should get more of that behavior Do not validate bad behavior because you don't want more of those things. There's this term that psychologists use that's called empathic validation, which really is just a psychological way of saying buttering somebody up. But maybe you've heard of it this way, the encouragement sandwich, where you do a compliment with a criticism in the middle, followed by a compliment at the end. This is a great technique to use with narcissists because they need that validation. So don't just come with a hard criticism, because remember, they're resistant to criticism. Come with validation, mix the criticism in the middle, and finish with validation again. That will help you relate well to somebody who is exhibiting narcissistic traits. And number 3 is don't join the drama. They love drama. They love to stir it up. They love to step back, and they love to watch people mess around in the drama they've created. They like to stir it up with you and them. They like to stir it up with you and your family. They like to stir it up with you and your friends. They just like to stir it up. Oftentimes stir up other people, step back, and just watch the drama. But you don't have to engage in the drama. If you've done it a few times, you already know that it gets you nowhere. So you get to make the choice when drama's occurring to just step out of it. You don't have to involve, and I know that's tough. So let me give you, sometimes it's hard to know, how do I disengage when we've already started down that cycle? So let me end by giving you 3 phrases that may be helpful for you if you want to disengage from the drama that they are trying to draw you into. The first phrase is simply thank you. Yeah, thank you, not like thank you because you're so great, but thank you for sharing your viewpoint. So you may bring something up and their tendency is to counter that thing and tell you why that thing's not quite right and why they were actually doing this and actually it's this view. Instead of going back and forth with them, all you need to do is just thank them for their viewpoint. Thank you for sharing your viewpoint on that, and then exit the conversation. There's no point in continuing the back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So just say thank you for sharing your viewpoint, and then you can move on down the road. Phrase number 2 is I see it differently. Now this is great because what they love to do is argue with you. And they always have their point of view, which is the right point of view in their mind. And they're always going to want to argue you into their point of view. So once you've shared your point of view and they've shared their point of view, and there's been a little bit of dialogue back and forth because that's healthy in relationship. I had a perspective, you had a perspective, we talked about it, and hopefully after we talk about it, I'm willing to see your perspective and see the merit in your perspective and you in mine, and that's how you resolve conflict. A narcissist does not want to see your perspective. They want to argue you into their perspective. So once you've gone back and forth a few times and you realize they're never going to come into your space and they're not going to stop until you step into agreement with them, instead of agreeing with them and giving in, just say, you know what, I see it differently. Or, I hear you. Thank you for sharing your viewpoint, but I actually see this one differently, and so let's move on down the road. You don't want to get stuck in the round and round and round and round and round we go cycle. You can bow out of that by simply saying, you know what, I see that differently, so let's move on down the road. Phrase number 3 that may be helpful is sorry. ... Not just sorry, I'm not telling you to apologize for everything. Although if you've done something wrong in a relationship, it is a good habit to apologize for your part in it. But what I'm saying is, sorry you feel that way. Or sorry you think that of me. So oftentimes what a narcissist will do is they love to attack. And they love to blame. And they love to tell you you're a horrible person. And you don't do anything right. And you don't appreciate them. And and all this attack. And it doesn't do you any good to attack back. So oftentimes the best way out is just to say, I'm sorry you think I'm that kind of a person. I'm sorry you think I'm a horrible person. I'm sorry you feel it. You know what? You're the reason that the family is this way. You're the reason that the kids act that way. You know what? You can't argue with them about that. So simply say, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry that you feel that I'm a terrible parent. I'm sorry that you feel that all of this is my fault. And then you may follow it up with, number 2, I see it differently. I'm sorry you feel that way. I actually see it differently. And then you want to bow out of the conversation. The point is, you don't want to get in the merry-go-round, the round and round, the cycle over and over again. And so these are some phrases that will help you exit the merry-go-round and move on with your day and not continue to engage in conversation with them. If they take it through the roof and continue to yell and scream, that's where going back to our boundaries. Listen, if you're going to cuss at me, if you're going to yell at me, I'm not going to engage in conversation with you. That's a boundary I've set, and I'm going to move on down the road. So there's 3 common signs, 3 tips to help you engage, and 3 phrases that may help you disengage in conversation with them. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, so let's start a discussion in the comment section below. If you think this video was helpful, consider sharing it with a friend, or maybe even sending it over to your narcissistic partner and see how well that goes. I'll see you next time right here on Relation Shots.